Captain Elias Kane stared out from the observation deck of the human transport, his hands gripping the cold railing. The stars stretched endlessly before him, but none of their light reached the tension in his chest. This was his first official mission as an envoy to the Orc Dominion, a race feared across the galaxy for their strength, cunning, and ruthless rule. Humanity was young and fragile in the cosmic hierarchy, and yet here he was tasked with negotiating peace and forging alliances with those who had no reason to trust him, or his people. The transport hummed softly as it descended toward the Sci. Dominion's homeworld, a jagged planet scarred with mountains and rivers of molten rock. Huge structures jutted from the terrain, a mix of natural rock and massive metal fortresses. The Orcs' reputation was not an exaggeration. Everything about their world screamed power and endurance. Elias knew the stories. Fleets crushed under their claws, warriors towering over most humanoid races, and an unbreakable hierarchy ruled by the fearsome Queen Sharthala. When the ship landed, the ramp descended with a hiss, and Elias stepped onto the planet. The ground trembled beneath him as enormous orcs, clad in heavy armor and carrying axes that could cleave a starship hull, surrounded the transport. The smell of metal, smoke, and a faint tang of blood filled the air. Even standing among them, Elias refused to show fear. Humans were small, yes, but they were clever, resilient, and bold. That boldness had kept his species alive long enough to reach this moment. He was escorted through towering gates into the heart of the Orc city. Walls carved from black stone rose above him, etched with images of warriors and battles fought centuries ago. The people of the Dominion watched silently, their eyes sharp, assessing him as though he were prey. Elias met their gaze steadily, unflinching. He had trained for this. Years of diplomacy, combat simulations, and cultural studies, but nothing truly prepared anyone for standing before a race that measured worth by the sharpness of their claws and the weight of their blows. At the center of the city lay the Grand Hall of the High Council, a cavernous space lit by molten crystals and fire pits. Queen Sharathala's throne sat atop a dais, massive and imposing, carved from black stone and decorated with crimson banners. The queen herself was even more formidable than the legends suggested. Her green skin was marked with scars, evidence of countless battles. Her armor gleamed despite its scars, showing her victories. Her eyes, amber and piercing, scanned Elias with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The Orc Council members flanked her, each towering over him, their presence enough to make most humans stumble back in fear. Yet Elias remained composed, his voice calm as he bowed slightly and spoke. "I am Elias Kane, envoy of the Terran Union. I come in peace, seeking dialogue and mutual understanding." The hall echoed with low, rumbling laughter. One of the counselors, a brute with tusks jutting from his jaw, sneered. "Peace? From a human? Do you not know we crush fleets, eat enemies, and bow to no one?" Elias did not flinch. Instead, he let his gaze move to the queen. "I know your strength," he said, "but I also know that strength can be respected, not feared. Humans wish to learn from the Dominion and offer wisdom of our own. There is more than one way to measure power." The queen's eyes narrowed, intrigued. She had seen many weaklings come before her, trembling and begging for mercy. This human was different. He did not plead. He did not boast. He merely stood, confident in his smallness, like a tree unbent by the wind. For a moment she wondered if his courage was foolish or remarkable. "Words are easy, human," she said, her voice deep and resonant. "But do you understand our ways? Our people respect strength above all. If you wish to stand here, you must prove it. Endurance, cunning, combat. Only then will you be heard." Elias nodded slowly. "I expected nothing less." The queen waved her hand, and two massive orc warriors stepped forward. They towered above him, muscles rippling, axes glinting under the molten light. Elias examined them carefully, noting their movements, their stances, and their likely strategy. A direct fight would be impossible, but humans had other tools: agility, speed, intelligence, and surprise. As he prepared, Elias murmured under his breath almost to himself, "You are the most striking queen." The words were not meant to be heard, but the queen's amber eyes caught them. For the first time she smiled, not cruelly, not with mockery, but with curiosity. A human dared to speak admiration, in her presence, without fear. And in that fleeting moment, a spark of intrigue ignited, one that neither of them could ignore. The trial would come soon, but the first step had already begun. Elias Kane, small, clever, and unbroken, had earned a fraction of respect from the most feared race in the galaxy, and that was enough to change everything. The arena was massive, carved from black stone and lit by molten rivers that ran beneath the floor. Orcs of all sizes had gathered, their eyes glinting with curiosity and amusement. Captain Elias Kane stepped onto the ground, his boots echoing against the stone as he faced his opponents. Two of the Dominion's fiercest warriors stood before him, each a mountain of muscle and scars, axes that could fell a human in a single swing resting casually at their sides. Elias swallowed his fear. Humans could not match the Orcs in strength or size. That much was obvious. But they had other gifts: speed, strategy, and adaptability. He took a deep breath, centering himself, knowing that any hesitation could cost him not just the trial, but the fragile chance to gain the Dominion's respect. The horn sounded, a low, thunderous roar that shook the arena. The two Orc warriors lunged at him immediately, axes swinging with deadly precision. Elias dodged to the side, rolling across the ground as one axe clipped the stone where his head had been moments before. He moved carefully, calculating every step, every movement, using their own momentum against them. The crowd jeered and laughed. Orcs were used to seeing humans fall in seconds. But Elias did not fall. Instead, he feinted to one side, drawing both warriors forward. With a quick maneuver, he used the arena's terrain, boulders and narrow ledges, to create space and confusion. The first Orc slammed into a wall, staggering, while the second lost his balance trying to follow. Queen Sharthala watched from her throne, her amber eyes narrowing. This human was clever, she admitted, his body small but his mind sharp. Few of her kind respected intelligence over strength, yet here was proof that cunning could rival muscle. She leaned forward, intrigued by the display, feeling a spark of something unfamiliar, admiration. Elias continued to move with purpose. He dodged, ducked, and even used a low kick to topple the second Orc, not to hurt him but to unbalance him. Each move was calculated, precise, designed to exhaust the larger warriors without direct confrontation. The crowd's laughter shifted to murmurs of surprise. This human was not as fragile as they assumed. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. The two Orcs began to tire, their swings growing slower, their stamina draining. Elias remained light on his feet, breathing steadily. Using strategy rather than strength, he circled the arena, always aware of his surroundings, always a step ahead. At last, the larger Orcs paused, chests heaving, glaring at him with a mixture of rage and disbelief. Elias seized the moment. He leaped toward the nearest wall, pushing, often using gravity to his advantage, landing behind the first warrior. With a swift movement, he triggered a trapdoor in the arena floor, sending the Orc stumbling into a lower chamber. The crowd gasped. The second warrior swung his axe in a wide arc, but Elias ducked, grabbed the weapon and twisted it aside, forcing the Orc to stumble once more. With careful timing, he guided the warrior into a corner, disarming him without serious harm. The trial ended. The arena went silent for a heartbeat before erupting into cheers, not just for Elias's victory, but for the display of skill, courage, and cleverness. Orcs who had expected an easy laugh now whispered to each other, amazed that a human could survive such a trial. Queen Sharthala rose from her throne, her presence commanding attention. "Enough," she said, her voice echoing. "The human has proven himself, not in strength alone, but in mind and spirit. Many warriors would have fallen long before now. He shows respect for life and strength in ways few can understand." Elias bowed respectfully, acknowledging the queen. "I do not fight to humiliate," he said, but to earn respect. Strength is valuable, but strategy and courage can balance it. That is the way my people survive. The queen's lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile. He was bold, clever, and unafraid. He had not bowed, not begged, and yet he had survived. She realized that this tiny human might carry more than words. He carried an example of humanity's resilience, its determination to thrive even in the face of overwhelming odds. "Your words are wise," she said, stepping closer, her massive form towering over him, yet not threatening. "Humans are fragile in body, but perhaps your people have other strengths worth seeing. You are not like the others who have come before you." Elias met her gaze steadily, a quiet confidence in his eyes. "We are small," he admitted, "but we endure, we survive, and we learn. That is what makes us strong." A murmur ran through the council. Some orcs scoffed, refusing to see value in a human's cleverness. Others, however, glanced at each other, curious and thoughtful. Perhaps this envoy carried more than a message. Perhaps he carried a lesson. Queen Sharthala's amber eyes lingered on him longer than necessary. He had spoken a truth that few of her kind had heard. Strength was more than muscle, courage more than a roar, and leadership more than fear. And in that gaze, a silent understanding formed between them. Fragile but undeniable. The trial was over. But Elias knew the real challenge had only begun. Earning respect was the first step, but navigating the politics, rivalries, and the queen's own untested curiosity would require every ounce of his wit, courage, and humanity. And somehow, he felt a strange certainty. He was not alone in this. The queen had seen him, not just as a human, but as someone remarkable in a way that could change the Dominion forever. The hall was quiet after the trial, the echoes of clashing axes and footsteps fading into memory. Captain Elias Kane wiped the sweat from his brow, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief. He had survived the arena, outsmarting two of the Dominion's strongest warriors, yet he knew that proving his worth physically was only the beginning. The real challenge was navigating the queen's attention, and the subtle currents of orc politics that twisted like the rivers of molten rock outside. Queen Sharthala descended from her throne with a fluid grace, her eyes fixed on him. The murmurs of the counselors faded, their faces a mixture of suspicion, admiration, and disbelief. No human had ever survived such a trial, let alone with cleverness and restraint. Many orcs were uneasy, others were intrigued. Elias felt the weight of her gaze, and for the first time since landing, his words from earlier, whispered almost without thought, returned to him. "You are the most striking queen." Sharthala stopped a few feet from him, her presence overwhelming, yet composed. Her amber eyes searched his, sharp and unyielding. "You speak freely, human," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. "Even in my presence you dared to speak admiration rather than fear. Tell me, why?" Elias straightened, meeting her gaze without hesitation. "I have seen many leaders, many warriors," he said carefully, choosing each word. "I have not seen one who commands respect and strength as you do. Your scars, your victories, your bearing, all of it speaks of wisdom and courage. I do not flatter, I observe." The queen tilted her head slightly, intrigued. She was used to fear, loyalty bought with intimidation, and warriors bowing to the strong. Rarely did anyone speak honestly about admiration without expecting something in return. This human had survived her trial, yet now he spoke as if he saw her as more than just a warrior. "You see me differently than most," she said. "Many see only my strength, my power, my victories. You notice more. Why should I trust that your words are true, and not the cunning of a human trying to manipulate a predator?" Elias considered her question for a moment. Honesty was the only path he knew. "Because I do not need your power to survive," he said. "I only need understanding. I believe that respect is earned, not demanded. Strength is more than muscle. It is vision, courage, and the willingness to face what others cannot. That is why I speak as I do. For a long moment, Sharthala studied him. The hall was silent save for the distant hum of the molten rivers. No one dared interrupt. Finally she spoke, her voice softer, almost curious. Humans are small, fragile, and often ignored. Yet you have survived unbroken, clever where many of your kind would fall. You are unlike them. Perhaps I misjudge this species. Elias inclined his head slightly, acknowledging her words without arrogance. Your judgment is fair, he said. Many underestimate humans. That is both a weakness and a strength. We survive because we adapt, because we learn, and because we act even when fear is strong. That is how I am here now. The Queen's expression softened ever so slightly, a rarity in the council chamber. She had ruled with authority for decades, and few had challenged her. Fewer still had spoken honestly and survived. She was both, curious and wary. You are bold, human. Few have the courage to speak as you do, fewer still to survive the trial. Yet I sense more than courage in your eyes. There is understanding, respect, and a will that matches even my strongest warriors. Elias allowed himself a small, respectful nod. I hope that is enough, he said. Because I wish to learn from you and perhaps one day stand as an ally of the Dominion, not a stranger to it. Sharthala's amber eyes lingered on him longer than necessary. Humans were unpredictable, fragile, and often reckless. Yet there was something in Elias that fascinated her. Perhaps it was his courage, his intelligence, or his refusal to fear her. Perhaps it was the quiet strength in his voice, the way he dared to see her as both a ruler and a person. For the first time, she considered a human not as prey, not as a curiosity, but as something more, a potential ally. You speak boldly, she said finally, and yet I find your words credible. Perhaps there is merit in your species after all. You have survived your trial, and you have earned my attention. That is rare. Elias felt a spark of hope. He had not only survived the arena, but had also planted the first seed of respect in the Queen's mind. He knew that winning her trust would not be simple. It would require more than clever maneuvers in the arena. It would require patience, understanding, and the courage to continue speaking truthfully, even when the risks were high. The council murmured among themselves, some skeptical, others intrigued. The Queen's attention alone could sway the Dominion, but her advisors were cautious. Elias knew that navigating this political landscape would be as dangerous as any trial, perhaps more so. Yet he also understood that this was his moment, the chance to prove humanity's value not just in strength, but in wisdom, courage, and resilience. Sharthala turned to leave, but her amber eyes held his for a final moment. We will see. If your words hold as much weight as your actions, human, she said, do not disappoint me. Elias watched her go, a sense of determination settling in his chest. The path ahead was uncertain, full of danger and challenge, but he had taken the first step. He had survived the trial, earned a fraction of respect, and most importantly, captured the Queen's attention. The journey was only beginning, and he knew that every choice from here on would shape not just his fate, but perhaps the future of human and orc alike. The council chamber buzzed with whispers and murmurs, a tension that Elias Kane could feel in the air. Though the Queen had shown a rare sign of curiosity and respect toward him, not everyone in the Grawl Orc Dominion welcomed the presence of a human. Some counselors viewed him as a weakling, a fragile creature unworthy of attention, and they were not shy about voicing their displeasure. A massive orc, his tusks sharp and curved, slammed his fist against the council table. Queen Sharthala, this human has no right to speak here. He is small, weak, and fragile. Your attention to him dishonors the Dominion. Do you forget that strength rules all? His voice boomed through the chamber, and the other counselors nodded, murmuring agreement. Sharthala's amber eyes remained calm, but the tension in the room was unmistakable. Strength alone does not make a ruler, Warlord Krath, she said firmly. And intelligence, courage, and foresight are not to be dismissed. This human has proven himself in ways few others could. even among our strongest warriors. Krath's eyes narrowed, smoke curling from his nostrils. He survived. By luck, by trickery. That is not strength, it is deceit. Elias felt the weight of the council's hostility, but he did not flinch. He had survived worse odds, and he had learned that courage could speak louder than fear. "If I may," he said, his voice steady. "I do not claim to be stronger than your warriors. I am smaller, weaker in muscle, but my strength lies in strategy and adaptability. That is what allowed me to survive the trial, and it is the same approach that can protect your people from threats too large for strength alone." The room fell silent. Even Warlord Krath hesitated, recognizing that there was truth in Elias's words. The Dominion had faced enemies whose brute force alone could not prevail. Humans, though small, had survived for centuries by cleverness and adaptability. Perhaps this envoy had something to teach them. Sharthala's gaze returned to Elias, her expression unreadable. "You speak wisely," she said. "Yet words are only one part of leadership. The Dominion respects action. If your intelligence can save us from a threat, then it is worth consideration. But beware, human. Not all who serve me will accept your guidance." Just as she finished speaking, a murmur ran through the council. A new voice, younger but no less fierce, challenged the queen. "If you favor this human over your own warriors, then you weaken the Dominion. Our strength has built empires. How can a frail creature guide us?" Sharthala's eyes narrowed, her voice firm and commanding. "You challenge my judgment, Warlord Varkas? Then let your actions prove your claim. Strength alone does not decide leadership. Strategy and foresight do. And if you cannot accept that, perhaps you will learn humility." Elias realized the council was at a crossroads. The Orcs were strong, proud, and steeped in tradition. Their instinct was to dismiss him. Yet the Queen's defense gave him a sliver of opportunity. He needed to show that humans had value beyond the battlefield, that intellect and courage could rival muscle and ferocity. Over the next days, Elias worked closely with the Queen, offering strategic insights, demonstrating tactics, and advising on methods to protect their borders without relying solely on brute force. He suggested using terrain cleverly, anticipating enemy movements and positioning warriors for maximum efficiency. At first, some Orcs resisted, their pride wounded by the idea that a human could outthink them. Then came the moment to test the strategies. A neighboring Orc clan, notorious for rebellion, threatened to invade. Warlord Krath and Warlord Varkas both prepared to meet them head-on, confident in raw power. Sharthala, with Elias's guidance, instead positioned forces along high ground, using traps and obstacles to weaken the enemy before engagement. The battle unfolded exactly as Elias predicted. The invaders, expecting a direct confrontation, were slowed, disoriented, and forced into disadvantageous positions. The Dominion's warriors, using his strategies, struck with precision. The rebels were defeated with minimal losses. The council chamber erupted in astonishment. Even Warlord Krath had to concede, albeit grudgingly, that the humans' guidance had been decisive. Sharthala's decision to consider Elias's advice had not weakened her rule, it had strengthened it. The Queen turned to Elias, her expression a mixture of respect and curiosity. "You have shown that strength is not only measured in muscle," she said. "Humans are fragile, yes, but your intelligence, courage, and vision can serve the Dominion as well as the mightiest warrior. You may yet prove invaluable." Elias nodded, a quiet satisfaction warming him. He had not only survived the arena, but had also begun to reshape the Dominion's perception of humanity. The Queen's trust was growing, and with it, the possibility of a lasting alliance. Yet he knew the path ahead would not be easy. Rival warlords would test the Queen, and the Dominion's loyalty to tradition was strong. Patience, strategy, and continued courage would be required to maintain the fragile bond between human and Orc. But Elias also knew that humans could endure where others faltered. With careful steps, he could turn this fragile beginning into something that might change the Dominion, and perhaps the galaxy, forever. And as he left the council chamber that evening, Sharthala's amber eyes followed him, thoughtful and unreadable. A spark had ignited between them, fragile but undeniable, and Elias understood that it was not only strategy or survival that would shape the days to come, but the quiet respect and understanding that had begun to grow between human and queen. The peace within the Dominion's walls was fragile. Captain Elias Kane had proven his worth in the council and on the battlefield, yet the galaxy had little patience for humans or orcs. Reports had arrived of a new threat, the Krell swarm, a vicious insectoid species known for devouring entire colonies, leaving nothing behind. Their fleets moved with terrifying speed, overwhelming planets in days. Queen Sharthala called an emergency council. The chamber was tense, filled with the murmurs of orc leaders and warriors, each struggling to understand how a human envoy could help against such a monstrous threat. The Krell were the sort of enemy that relied on brute force and relentless numbers, something orc strength alone could not easily counter. Elias stood before the queen, his mind racing. "The Krell are not invincible," he said, his voice steady. "They are numerous and fast, yes, but they are predictable. Their swarm tactics rely on overwhelming force, not intelligence. If we coordinate carefully, we can divide them, trap them, and neutralize their advance before they reach the Dominion's core worlds." A murmur ran through the council. Some orcs scoffed at the idea, believing brute force alone could handle any threat. Others, still wary but curious, listened carefully. Queen Sharthala's amber eyes fixed on Elias, thoughtful. She had seen his intelligence in the arena and the previous battle against the rebellious clan. Perhaps there was merit in his strategy. "You suggest cooperation," she said. "With humans?" Elias nodded. "Yes. Our fleets are smaller, but precise. We can act as scouts, strike with speed, and anticipate the Krell's movements. Your warriors are unmatched in strength. Together, we combine speed and power. Alone, we risk being devoured one planet at a time." The queen considered his words. The Dominion prided itself on strength, often ignoring smaller species. Yet Elias spoke with confidence and knowledge, not fear. "Very well," she said finally. "Humans will fight beside us. But know this, human, any betrayal, any mistake, and the consequences will be severe." Elias met her gaze steadily. "I understand, Your Majesty. I intend to honor your trust." The next days were a flurry of preparation. Human engineers and orc strategists worked side by side, planning defenses, mapping potential battle zones, and coordinating fleet movements. Orc warriors grumbled at the presence of humans, but even the most skeptical could not deny Elias's insight. The humans moved quickly, suggesting tactics that relied on agility, timing, and clever use of terrain in space battles. When the Krell swarm appeared on the edge of Dominion space, it was as terrifying as the report suggested. Thousands of insectoid ships moved like a single organism, their jagged armor glinting in the starlight. Orc fleets surged forward instinctively, ready to crush the enemy with raw power. But Sharthala held them back, her gaze on Elias. "Your plan," she commanded. "Lead." Elias took a deep breath, his mind sharp despite the pounding of adrenaline. Human and orc forces spread strategically across the battlefield, using gravity wells and asteroid belts as traps. Small, precise strikes disrupted the Krell formations, forcing them to split. Orc warriors, guided by human timing, struck with devastating efficiency. For the first time, many orcs saw the value of cooperation. Humans were not weak. They were different, clever, fast, and unpredictable. They moved where orcs could not, striking with precision that complemented brute force. Together they formed a deadly combination the Krell had not anticipated. The battle raged across the red nebula, fiery explosions and the hum of engines filling the void. Elias and Queen Sharthala coordinated closely, sending rapid messages and adjusting strategies on the fly. Their movements were synchronized, a balance of intellect and strength. For a moment, all differences between species disappeared, replaced by a single purpose: survival and victory. At a critical point, the Krell attempted to encircle a Dominion flagship. Elias's prediction proved correct. Using the human fleet, As a lure, they baited the Krell into a trap formed by Orc battalions and asteroid fields. The swarm crashed into the carefully prepared defenses, suffering massive losses. Orc warriors roared as they struck, their axes cutting down the weakened enemies with brutal efficiency. When the last of the Krell ships retreated, the battlefield was silent except for the slow crackle of fires and the hum of damaged engines. The Dominion had survived, and it was not by brute strength alone. Humans had proven themselves indispensable. Orcs looked at Elias differently now, some with grudging respect, others with awe. Queen Sharthala approached him, her massive form imposing yet calm. "You were right," she said, her amber eyes meeting his. "Strength is not only muscle. Strategy, courage, and adaptability can be just as powerful. You and your people have earned your place beside us." Elias bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only acted to protect those who trusted me. That is all any human can do." For the first time, a true bond of respect formed between human and queen, built not on fear, not on victory alone, but on shared struggle and survival. And as the survivors returned to the Dominion's worlds, Elias knew that the galaxy was beginning to see humans as more than fragile creatures. They were partners, allies, and perhaps in time equals. The battlefield above the red nebula glowed with fire and energy, ships twisting and turning through debris and plasma storms. Captain Elias Kane gripped the controls of his human interceptor, his eyes scanning the chaotic swarm of Krell ships. The Dominion's fleet was immense, Orc warriors roaring commands, axes ready to strike, but the swarm was relentless. They moved like one organism, their numbers overwhelming even the largest formations. Beside him, Queen Sharthala piloted her flagship, massive and adorned with crimson banners that glimmered in the nebula's red light. Her amber eyes were sharp, focused, analyzing every move, every potential threat. Elias could feel the tension radiating from her. Yet there was a trust there he had earned, a bond forged in the previous battles and trials. Together they formed the nerve center of the Dominion's defense. "Elias," she called through the comms, her voice steady and commanding, "the Krell are attempting to encircle our main fleet. If they succeed, the entire armada could be lost." "Understood," Elias replied. "We'll have to split their forces, lure them into the trap we prepared with the asteroid belt. The smaller ships will create confusion, and your warriors can strike when they are disoriented." Sharthala nodded. "Lead the strike. I will follow with the battalions." Elias accelerated, weaving through the swarm with a speed and precision the Orcs could not match. His interceptor dodged blasts, turned sharply through gaps in debris, and drew the Krell forward exactly as he planned. Orc ships followed, heavy and powerful but slowed by their size. The Krell, fooled by the maneuver, moved aggressively into the narrow fields of asteroids, unaware of the ambush waiting for them. The moment the first wave entered the trap, the Dominion struck. Orc battleships unleashed volleys that tore through the Krell hulls, while Elias's human craft targeted weak points, disabling engines and weapons. The swarm faltered, disoriented, their numbers now a disadvantage as they collided with asteroids and each other. Queen Sharthala descended into the heart of the fight, her flagship cutting a path through the chaos. She roared commands, her warriors striking with precision, axes cleaving through Krell ships and boarding pods. Elias followed, coordinating human interceptors to intercept escape pods and reinforce vulnerable sectors. Every movement was synchronized, intellect and strength combined, the result of trust, strategy, and courage. Suddenly, a massive Krell dreadnought broke through the defenses, moving straight for the Dominion flagship. "Sharthala, it's heading for you," Elias warned, his hands flying over controls. "I see it," she replied. "We cannot wait for it to reach the fleet. We strike now." Without hesitation, Sharthala's ship cut through the nebula firestorm, axes of energy, blasting the dreadnought's hull. Elias followed closely, using his smaller craft to target weak points the Orcs could not reach. Explosions shook the void as the dreadnought retaliated, firing streams of plasma that tore through nearby asteroids. "This is it," Elias muttered, determination in his eyes. "We go together." Sharthala glanced at him, a rare flicker of approval in her gaze. Together, human. They initiated a boarding maneuver, their ships docking with the dreadnought amid chaos. The airlock hissed open and they leapt inside, weapons ready. The Krell warriors were enormous, their carapaces thick and bladed appendages glinting. Elias moved with precision, dodging attacks, striking at joints, using strategy rather than strength. Sharthala moved beside him, her axe swinging in powerful arcs, cleaving through Krell defenses with raw force. They fought side by side, intellect and strength working as one. Elias anticipated attacks, guided the Queen and disabled critical systems, while Sharthala cleared paths, cutting down enemies with unmatched skill. Together, they moved through the dreadnought, each step a combination of human cunning and orc ferocity. Finally, they reached the control chamber. Elias worked quickly to override the Krell systems while Sharthala guarded him, fending off the remaining warriors. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the ship shook from internal explosions. With one final command, the Krell ship's engines failed, and the vessel drifted powerless, destined to be destroyed by Dominion fire. They returned to their ships battered but victorious. The swarm, seeing their dreadnought lost, began to retreat, breaking formation under relentless Dominion attack. Orc and human forces pressed the advantage, driving the Krell away from the Red Nebula and securing the Dominion's space. As the I-4 battle ended, the silence was almost deafening, broken only by the hum of damaged engines and distant explosions. Elias allowed himself a brief moment to breathe. He had survived against impossible odds, and alongside the Queen, they had won a decisive victory. Sharthala approached him, massive and imposing, yet her gaze was not of a warrior judging an opponent. It was something different, something earned. "You were brave, human," she said, her voice carrying across the comms. "Your mind guided the fleet, and your courage matched even my fiercest warriors. Together, we are stronger than any enemy." Elias nodded, feeling a rare sense of pride. "It was an honor, Your Majesty. We fight best when we trust each other." For the first time, the Dominion saw humanity not as fragile creatures, but as partners in battle, capable of matching orcs in courage, intelligence, and resilience. And for Elias, the bond he had forged with the Queen was more than political. It was a proof of what humans could accomplish when given the chance. The Red Nebula lay behind them, a swirling cloud of red and orange glowing faintly as the Dominion and human fleets returned to home space. The Krell swarm had been driven back, their threat diminished for now, but the victory had changed more than the map of the galaxy. It had changed the hearts and minds of those who witnessed it. Orcs, who had once sneered at the idea of humans as allies, now looked upon them with respect, curiosity, and cautious admiration. Captain Elias Kane stood on the deck of the Dominion flagship, watching the stars streak past. He felt the weight of exhaustion from the recent battle, but also the quiet satisfaction of accomplishment. Humanity had proven itself, not through raw strength, but through courage, strategy, and unyielding determination. They had earned a place among the stars, a position that no one had ever truly believed humans could reach so soon. Queen Sharthala emerged from the council chamber, her armor still marked with the scratches and burns of the recent fight. Her presence was commanding, yet today there was no trace of the usual harshness in her gaze. Instead, her amber eyes held a quiet respect as they met his. "Captain Kane," she said, her voice carrying across the deck, "you have shown that humans are more than fragile creatures. Your people possess wisdom, courage, and resilience. You have fought alongside the Dominion, not as inferiors, but as equals." Elias inclined his head in respect. "It was not my strength alone, Your Majesty. Your warriors and leadership made this possible. Humans survived because you allowed us to fight beside you to contribute where we could. We have learned from the Dominion as much as we have taught." The Queen's expression softened. She had long ruled through fear and power, yet something about this human had changed her perspective. "I once believed strength alone defined worth," she admitted. "Now I see that strength is more than muscle. It is intelligence, courage, and the will to stand when others falter." You have shown me that. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled counselors and officers. Many orcs had been skeptical, but even the most stubborn could not deny the truth. Humans had proven their value, not by following blindly, but by thinking, observing, and acting with determination. A fragile species? Perhaps. But clever, courageous, and unyielding. A force to respect. Elias felt a subtle warmth in the Queen's gaze, a recognition that went beyond politics or strategy. "Your words honor me," he said quietly, "but I speak only what I have witnessed. You are a true leader, and your people are fortunate to follow you." Sharthala's lips curved in the faintest of smiles, rare and fleeting. "And you, human, are fortunate to be here. Many would not survive the Dominion's scrutiny, let alone earn trust and respect. You have shown perseverance and courage. For that, you have my acknowledgement." The fleets had returned to orbit around the Dominion's homeworld, a shimmering display of ships from both species. Elias watched as humans and orcs worked together, repairing damage, coordinating supply lines, and sharing knowledge. It was a sight that symbolized something far greater than mere victory. It was a new era. A bond had been forged, built on mutual respect and trust, and the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. The Queen moved closer to Elias, her voice lowering so only he could hear. "You spoke to me honestly, without fear, without pretense. Few have dared. You have not only survived the trials and battles, but you have earned a place in the Dominion's story. That is no small feat for a human." Elias met her gaze steadily. "It was never about survival alone," he said. "It was about proving that humans are worthy, that we can stand beside you, not beneath you, that courage, intelligence, and determination have value, even in the face of overwhelming odds." Sharthala's amber eyes lingered on him, thoughtful. "You have reminded me that leadership is more than power, that respect can be earned in many ways, and that alliances are stronger when built on trust. You have changed the Dominion, human. Do not forget that." Elias nodded, a quiet pride in his heart. He had not only survived the trials, outwitted warriors, and fought a galactic menace, but he had also bridged the divide between two very different species. The lessons of strategy, courage, and respect would endure, and the story of humanity's resilience would travel far beyond the Dominion. As the sun of the Dominion's homeworld rose over the jagged mountains, casting its fiery glow across the fleet, the Queen and the human envoy stood side by side, watching the dawn of a new era. It was a future shaped by cooperation, trust, and the recognition that even the smallest species could leave a mark on the galaxy. Sharthala turned to Elias, her expression unreadable yet meaningful. "We will see many challenges ahead," she said. "But know this, human. You have my attention, my trust, and my respect. That is rare. Do not squander it." Elias allowed himself a small smile. "I would not dare," he replied. "We fight together, we endure together, and we learn together. That is how we survive, and that is how we thrive." For the first time, the Dominion saw humans not as fragile outsiders, but as equals, partners, and allies. And for Elias Kane, the journey had proven that humanity's courage, intelligence, and resilience could not only survive in the galaxy, but could also earn respect from even the fiercest of rulers. In the quiet glow of the nebula-lit sky, human and orc looked toward the future, uncertain, challenging, but brighter than it had ever been. And in that shared vision, a bond had been forged that would shape the galaxy for generations to come.